The Outer Frontier. Book 3. A Hope to a Peace. Chapter 1. The Forbidden Archive. The war was no longer a secret. For 3 centuries, humanity had carried alone the burden of defending the outer defensive front. Now, for the first time in recorded history, the civilizations of the Galactic Union stood together against a common enemy. Human dreadnoughts sailed beside Elyrian battlecruisers. Valeri support vessels crossed paths with engineering fleets from worlds that, only months earlier, had never imagined war on such a scale. Orbital shipyards worked without pause, assembling replacement hulls before the previous generation had even reached the front. The galaxy had awakened. Yet awakening had not been enough. Every morning began with another list of losses. Another observation station abandoned. Another convoy intercepted. Another system declared unsalvageable. The enemy advanced exactly as it always had. Slowly, silently, relentlessly. Fleet Marshal Jonathan Hayes stood alone before the immense holographic projection dominating Bastion, 9th Strategic Operations Center. Thousands of luminous symbols floated in the darkness. Green represented Allied fleets. Blue marked logistics corridors. Amber identified emergency reinforcement routes. Beyond them stretched an expanding sea of crimson. The enemy. Not individual fleets. Not known positions. Simply probability. Every crimson region represented space where reconnaissance vessels no longer returned. The projection updated itself continuously. Each hour, the red frontier crept a fraction farther toward the galactic interior. Almost imperceptibly. Almost. Hayes had learned long ago that wars were rarely lost in spectacular defeats. Most were lost millimeter by millimeter. A supply convoy delayed. A repair dock destroyed. A colony evacuated 1 week earlier than planned. Individually insignificant. Together, irreversible. Behind him, representatives of nearly 20 civilizations debated projected manufacturing capacity. The Karen Republic estimates a 34% increase in antimatter production. Our shipyards can provide 12 additional carriers within 8 months. The Valeri request authorization to relocate civilian transport lanes. Fuel reserves along Sector Sigma remain below acceptable limits. Hayes listened without turning. 3 centuries of war had taught him that numbers could lie. Logistics never did. He studied the projection for another minute before speaking quietly. "We're getting better at losing." The officers fell silent. Hayes finished the sentence without taking his eyes from the map. More slowly. No one argued. Because no one could. The arrival of the Galactic Union had achieved something extraordinary. Humanity no longer fought alone. The line had stopped collapsing. But it was not advancing. It was merely surviving. Every kilometer held today would eventually have to be defended again tomorrow. Victory remained as distant as ever. Nearly 40,000 light-years away. War was being fought in an entirely different form. Deep beneath the crystalline capital of the Elyrian Dominion lay a place almost forgotten by time. Archivum Primaris. Unlike the magnificent public archives visited by diplomats and scholars, these vaults had never been intended for admiration. They existed for preservation. Entire eras of Elyrian civilization slept within their silent chambers. Treaties older than many stars. Scientific observations recorded before humanity had discovered agriculture. Languages that no living being could still pronounce. History itself rested there, layer upon layer carefully protected against time. Or so everyone believed. Since the formation of the Alliance, thousands of historians had been assigned to compare human military records with ancient Elyrian archives. The objective had seemed straightforward. Search for any indication that similar disappearances had occurred in the distant past. Most expected nothing. The enemy appeared unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. The project had already lasted months. Millions of documents had been cataloged. Nothing useful had emerged. Until now. Senior Archivist Selyra descended alone into Vault 17. The chamber had remained sealed for so long that the air carried the faint metallic scent of dormant preservation systems. Rows of dark crystalline shelves extended into the distance. Unlike modern archives, these records had never been digitized. Each cylinder contained an original memory crystal. Some were older than entire civilizations. Her assignment was almost insulting in its simplicity. Verify inventory. Confirm integrity. Nothing more. She activated her scanner. Thousands of identification markers appeared. One did not. At the far end of the chamber rested a single black cylinder. No catalog number. No imperial seal. No preservation record. Nothing. Only an unfamiliar symbol engraved into its surface. A triangle, crossed by a single horizontal line. Selyra frowned. She had studied Elyrian history for nearly 2 centuries. She had never seen that emblem. Curiosity overcame protocol. She carried the cylinder to an isolated reconstruction terminal. The interface hesitated, then displayed a message she had never encountered before. Authorization code unknown, archival status removed. Removed. Archives were never removed. They were transferred. Restricted. Sealed. Never removed. She bypassed the damaged authentication layer manually. Ancient systems rarely resisted modern historians. The crystal awakened. Static filled the room. The projection flickered repeatedly before stabilizing. An Elyrian appeared. His uniform belonged to no period she recognized. Its design was archaic. Its insignia absent from every historical registry. He looked exhausted. Not physically. Spiritually. His eyes carried the expression of someone who had seen something he wished had never existed. For several long seconds, he simply stared into the recording device. Then he spoke. If this message is being viewed. He paused. Then we failed. Selyra instinctively leaned closer. Our orders were clear. We were to erase every public record of this expedition. Not because our discoveries lacked importance, but because we believed no civilization should ever know what we found. The archivist felt her pulse quicken. Erase. The Elyrian Dominion did not erase history. It preserved it. That principle formed the foundation of their civilization. The officer continued. If you are seeing this recording, then silence is no longer protecting anyone. The image distorted. When it returned, the officer was no longer aboard a ship. He stood inside a structure unlike anything Selyra had ever seen. Stone. Not alloy. Not crystal. Stone. Behind him rose walls hundreds of meters high. Every surface was covered with carvings. Entire histories etched into rock. She enlarged the projection. Thousands of figures emerged. Cities. Stars. Ships. Battles. Then, the creatures. Her breath stopped. Long, asymmetrical bodies. Bladed limbs, the same impossible anatomy, the same grotesque silhouettes. There could be no mistake. The beings carved into those walls were identical to the enemy, now attacking the outer defensive front. 40,000 years earlier. The officer raised one hand toward the mural. It was never only a war. Their civilization built something. The recording shifted. The camera slowly moved across the wall. At first, Selyra saw only stars connected by elegant lines. Then realization struck. It was not decoration. It was a map. Fortresses, supply worlds, defensive bastions, each connected to the next. A continuous chain stretching across the edge of the galaxy. A line, not humanity's line. An older one, far older. The officer's voice became almost a whisper. They stood where humanity stands now. Static overwhelmed the recording. The image nearly vanished. Only fragments of sound remained. Do not search for weapons. We searched. We were wrong. The projection stabilized one final time. The officer looked directly toward whoever might one day discover the recording. You must understand why they never changed. Those were his last words. The image disappeared. Darkness returned to the chamber. Selyra remained motionless. Minutes passed, perhaps longer. Finally, she noticed something unusual. The memory cylinder contained a secondary compartment, one that had not appeared on any scan. She carefully released its locking mechanism. Inside rested a small, translucent crystal, no larger than her hand. When she placed it upon the projection table, the chamber filled with light. A star map emerged. It did not resemble any modern navigation chart. Its point of origin lay near the galactic core. From there, a succession of ancient colonies extended outward in a graceful arc, one after another, each farther from the center, each older than the last, until the final markers reached the very edge of known space. Beyond them, the route continued into complete darkness, uncharted, unexplored. Beyond the frontier itself, a single inscription appeared beneath the map, written in an ancient language long abandoned even by the Elyrians. The translator struggled before finally producing a single sentence. Last known route of the Guardians. Selyra stared at the words. The ancient expedition had not discovered the birthplace of a forgotten civilization. It had uncovered the trail of an entire people, a civilization that had retreated, colony by colony, toward the edge of the galaxy. Not expanding, not exploring, fleeing. Far above the silent vaults of Archivum Primaris, the war for the survival of the galaxy continued. No one yet realized that, buried beneath 40,000 years of deliberate silence, lay the first real hope the galaxy had ever possessed.